This episode of Hot Cup Cold Case contains disturbing details about a violent crime and may not be appropriate for some listeners. If we sound irritated, it's because this is the second time we're now recording this intro. My computer stopped working. I'm Brant.
I'm Rachel.
And this is Hot Cup
Cold Case,
where every couple of weeks we invite you into our apartment and share with you the two things that keep us up at night. And the first is a hot cup of caffeine, and the second is a cold case. So grab your mugs and buckle up, because this episode, Rach is going to be sharing the details of a cold case that I know nothing about, and then I've got a closed case to share with you that she knows nothing about. Then we'll end the episode with a short but strange criminal case we like to call a mugshot.
Is it still recording?
It is still recording. I know, I'm like paranoid about it now too. If you don't currently follow us on Facebook, then you're missing out, because this week there was a live police chase in Detroit, and I shared the link on our Facebook page. It was a 26-year-old man who apparently got in an argument with his baby mama and took their 3-month-old child and then told her he wasn't giving the child back unless she paid him money. Well, she called the police, and when the police showed up, he took off with the baby in the back seat. And at one point during the chase, he actually stopped and met the baby's mother on a street corner to hand off the baby before taking off again and running from police.
Yeah, this was the most excitement we've had in about 5 weeks, so we were glued to the TV.
I could not stop watching it.
One of the articles I read said that at one point he stopped at a gas station and tried to get a pedestrian to pump his gas for him and then start driving again.
I was watching it when that happened. He pulled into a gas station, followed by police cars that quickly surrounded him and refused to get out of his vehicle. He tried to convince a nearby bystander to pump his car full of gas. And of course, I can't hear what any of them are saying from the helicopter footage, but you can tell the man holding the gas pump is like really confused because the driver's yelling at him to pump his car with gas, and police are surrounding the gas station and probably yelling, "Don't do it!" But eventually the driver pulls out of the gas station, and I think he ended up getting away.
Yeah, because our helicopter feed went blank after a few minutes.
All of the articles that I found online didn't have any record that he was ever actually apprehended.
It was crazy.
So, like I said, if you don't follow us on Facebook, you need to, because we would love to share things like that we find for you. I also learned that I'm a lot more like Michael Scott from The Office than I want to believe.
Why?
Do you remember that episode when Michael Scott ate an entire plate of chicken Alfredo before he went for a run?
Oh my gosh, yes. It's so disgusting. It makes me want to vomit every time I watch it.
Well, Rach, you wanted to go for a bike ride this week, but I didn't have my bike with me, so I just decided to run along behind you without stopping to think that I had eaten an entire plate of your amazing chicken Alfredo for lunch, and I quickly regretted it.
Oh, I remember, and our child kept saying, "Run faster, run faster."
She's yelling at me from the bike trailer.
Yeah, she's sitting there in her chariot as I'm pulling her and you're running alongside. Go faster. Don't stop. Keep running.
She's like the cutest little motivational coach, but also I just wanted to puke in that moment.
Ugh. And it's hot outside.
Yeah.
So gross.
And speaking of your chicken Alfredo, Rach also made these homemade oatmeal cream pies this week. Oh my God, y'all. It is like being quarantined with Joanna Gaines.
Oh, thank you.
Starting to realize how Martha Stewart's cellmates must have felt when she was in prison.
She couldn't cook for them.
But if she could, it would have been something like this.
Oh, gosh.
Seriously, I have had some of the best food during this quarantine that I've ever eaten in my life.
Yes, I bake for him constantly. We are all wondering how Brant is not 600 pounds.
Well, I do a lot of toddler yoga.
Oh, gosh.
And I eat a lot of chicken Alfredo before going for a run. So if you guys want some of Rachel's recipes, DM us.
Same for Sal.
Everything has a price.
Everything has a price.
Well, what do you say we get into this cold case?
Let's do it. This is a very strange one. So tonight I'm going to share with you a cold case about Adam Emery. So Adam and his wife Elena were at a local seafood stand with another couple grabbing dinner on August 30th, 1990. It was around 9 p.m. While they were enjoying dinner, a car raced by them and sideswiped Adam's car. The car did a hit and run and disappeared around a corner. So Adam and Elena jumped into their car and chased after the car that just sideswiped them.
Oh, wow.
This was suggested by his wife, Elena. She thought she could see the car that hit theirs, so they thought they could catch up and confront them.
Yeah, that sounds like something you would suggest as well.
No, I've learned my lesson. It's not a good idea. It's very unsafe.
It is, because you don't know what kind of crazy is behind that wheel.
I know. So Adam and Elena caught up to the car. They somehow got the car to pull over, and Adam began screaming and cussing them out. Inside was a 20-year-old Jason Bass and his cousin Joshua Post. Adam then jumped on top of the hood of Jason's car and somehow was able to stab him through the chest, piercing his heart and killing him.
Oh my God.
Yes.
This is giving me flashbacks, because I remember a couple summers ago when you went to Texas to visit family and I was here by myself.
Oh my gosh, I remember the story. This is terrifying.
Yeah, I was driving through a neighborhood going about 15, maybe 20 miles per hour. And the sun was setting and it was kind of hard to see because of the glare off the windshield. Well, I almost hit this young girl who was driving in her car with her dad. And both of us managed to swerve and avoid each other and quickly bring our vehicles to a stop. Because like I said, we're only going like 20 miles per hour. So I rolled down my window and asked if they were okay and quickly apologized. And all of a sudden, this large man gets out of the vehicle. It's her dad. And he is seeing red. And he starts coming over to my car and he is calling me every name in the book. Like I said, no one was hurt. I didn't even hit the car, but I'm just being super respectful and apologizing because it was completely my fault. Like, everyone's fine, but he just lost it. This guy reached inside of my car, smacked me in the head, and I thought I was about to lose my life. His family is screaming at him from the car to just come back and get in the car and leave. And my heart was pounding so fast because I thought this guy was going to pull me out of my window and beat me right there in the street.
Yes, and I'm in Texas hearing this and I am scared and angry. And of course, I'm a justice seeker. So I'm like, did you call the police? Like, did this guy get arrested?
Yeah, I should have, but I was actually in shock. It was one of the few moments in my life where I've actually completely froze. I think it's because the level of his anger was so out of place, where no one was hurt. There wasn't even a scratch on our cars. We were going 20 miles an hour, that I literally just could not compute why this guy was about to murder me. I mean, his family was screaming at him to please leave me alone. It was crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy.
And so that is why I tell Rachel not to go chasing after drivers who may be in a fit of road rage.
And I do not.
So I can imagine how Jason must have been feeling in that moment.
Yes. So remember, Adam somehow was able to stab him and kill him right then. I don't know if it was like a convertible or if he just reached through the window. There wasn't a ton of articles on it, but local neighbors ended up emerging from their houses because they're hearing this yelling and screaming and all out panic. And they came to render aid. And one being an off-duty detective for the Rhode Island State Police. He was quoted saying the whole air about the scene was very spooky. This is an extremely tragic case, and even worse than Adam and Elena's insane rage was the fact that Jason was not the person who hit Adam's car.
Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
Elena saw the wrong car.
So Jason must have had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, he had no idea. Him and his cousin were just driving along and were being tailed and pulled over, and then he was killed. Jason died at the hands of a lunatic for literally no reason at all.
Jesus.
So the police collected paint chips, and that's how they were able to determine that it wasn't a match. Adam was charged with second-degree murder, and on his 31st birthday, November 10th, the trial concluded and he was found guilty of second-degree murder. Those who were close to Adam did feel like this set of events were completely out of character for him. He had never been in trouble with the law before.
Mm-hmm.
Reporter Elizabeth Rowe, who was in attendance at the trial, said Adam's testimony was very rigid. He never expressed any remorse for killing Jason and said he stabbed him in self-defense.
Oh, yikes.
Well, what makes me mad is that the judge actually allowed Adam to remain out on bail until formal sentencing would take place, and that was still a month away.
Oh, wow.
And I just think that this guy's obviously a lunatic. Like, why would you just let him go back out on bail?
Well, the fact that he feels no remorse for what he did really concerns me.
Absolutely. And the judge made a huge mistake.
No.
Because by that evening, it was assumed that Adam and Elena had arranged a master plan. Was I going to show up on the podcast?
Did
that
you?
was Brant's stomach.
Did you hear my belly growl? I need some more oatmeal cream pie.
I'm kind of hungry right now, too. And we just ate dinner.
You know what? Let's take a break.
Okay,
This is our podcast. We can do what we want.
Yeah, we're going to order a pillow pizza.
We'll be back. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Patreon, it's kind of like a tip jar for podcasts. And if you really enjoy our podcast and you want more, if you go to our website, hotcupcoldcasepodcast.com, you'll see a link for our Patreon where you can subscribe and get access to exclusive episodes that we will not be releasing on any other streaming service. And we're calling these our Red Eye episodes. Normally, a red eye is a drink that Rach and I order at our coffee shop because it has an extra shot of espresso to keep us awake. But our red eye episodes are stories that have an extra shot of strange that will definitely help keep you awake. And here's a sample of what you can expect from a red eye episode. There are some cold cases that keep us up at night because they're unsolved. And then there are those that haunt us because they're unexplained. These are stories of people, places, and events with an extra shot of strange. Hot Cup Cold Case presents Red Eye, True Stories of the Unexplained. All right, guys, sorry to leave you hanging. We're back.
And our bellies are full. So the trial wrapped up around 3 p.m., and Adam left the courthouse with Elena. It's said that within 30 minutes, they were spotted at a local sporting goods store. The manager said both seemed normal, and they acted like nothing was wrong. Elena specifically was very chatty and smiley to the manager. The couple bought matching sweatsuits, socks, and 80 pounds of strap-on exercise weights. The manager did note that Adam seemed to be shocked by how much the bill was.
Okay.
So after leaving the sporting goods store, the couple were spotted dining at a local fast food restaurant. Around 4:45, the couple arrived at the Newport Bridge. By 4:50, eyewitnesses recalled seeing the couple on the walkway of the bridge. By 5:15, they had driven away. 2 hours later, their car was found back on the Newport Bridge. It's believed that the couple planned and arranged a double suicide.
What?
Apparently, the Emerys returned to the bridge, but everything after that is quite the mystery. The police thought because they bought these matching sweatsuits and 80 pounds worth of weights, that they were planning to jump the bridge together and drown.
The weights I understand, but the matching sweatsuits is a weird
I think they
touch.
just wanted to go down in style.
That's odd.
So the search for their bodies was one of the most extensive searches in the history of Rhode Island. However, not one shred of evidence was ever recovered from the bay.
So they could have faked their own deaths.
Right. No one knows. So the detective on the case remembered something from the courtroom after the verdict. He saw the couple talking, but he couldn't quite make out what they said. So he took the tape to a hearing-impaired woman and had her read the lips of what the couple were saying.
Oh, wow.
I know. I thought that was pretty genius, actually.
Yeah.
Elena apparently said, "We're going to do what we originally said. You promised to me." Did this couple arrange a double suicide, or was it a ruse? The detectives couldn't reconcile Adam being so shocked about the price of the weights and the clothes and his demeanor at the restaurant if he was just going to end his life.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like they were concerned enough about ending their life.
Well, and you said Elena was really chatty.
Right. They gave no indication that there was anything wrong.
Yeah, that's not how I would imagine someone behaves right before they commit a double suicide.
Exactly. But a few months after that, a fisherman found 2 human leg bones in his net. One leg had a fragment of a sock that was believed to be the same sock that the Emerys bought before they disappeared.
Oh.
Authorities collected the DNA from Elena's mother and sister, but the bones were determined to be a male, not a female. However, the bones did not match Adam's height.
Huh.
A few weeks after that, the detective on the case responded to an urgent call from the bay. There was another piece of evidence. There was a skull. It apparently was identified as Elena's.
Oh.
However, to this day, there has been zero evidence that positively affirms that Adam died with Elena. No one is even sure that he even tried to commit suicide. He could be alive and well right now.
That is so weird.
And actually, a federal warrant was issued on January 18th, 1994, that charged Adam with unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. He is currently wanted by the FBI. Adam is 6'1", and at the time weighed 175 pounds with brown hair and blue eyes. So to this day, police do not think that he even tried to commit suicide. They fully believe that he is alive and well, living his life.
Well, I think you have to assume that when there's no evidence or proof that he's dead.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But that can't be what Elena meant when she said, "We're going to do what we had originally planned, you promised."
Well, I think that he was trying to avoid arrest, and I think she did jump, thinking he was going to, and I don't think he did. I don't know how you could let your wife just dive into the bay without you, but he did, because her skull was found, so
Right.
She had to have jumped, or he killed her and dumped her body.
That is wild.
I know. It's a bizarre
And
case.
his car was left on the bridge, right?
Yes, his car was found on the bridge.
Which means if he is alive, he left the bridge some other way.
Oh, I'm sure he wouldn't use his car. If he had enough sense to plan out this whole ruse, I think he thought about that as well. What doesn't make sense to me, though, is why they went to the bridge at 4:45. Eyewitnesses saw them walking on the bridge at 4:50, and then by 5:15, they had driven away. And then 2 hours later, their car was found back on Newport Bridge.
That is so weird.
I know. So what happened between 5:15 and 7:15?
Maybe they were trying to gather up their nerve.
I don't know. It's very bizarre. If you're going to commit suicide, why would you care about how much something costs?
Maybe that's a sign that Adam wasn't intending on committing suicide. But I still think Elena's behavior in the store is really not typical of someone who is about to end their life.
I agree.
My only other thought was, did they buy these tracksuits and weights so that there would be record that they owned them and then somehow stage their death?
But they positively identified that skull to be Elena's. There isn't any doubt about that. But nothing was ever recovered. So the tracksuits, the weights, nothing has ever been found.
I cannot figure this one out.
I know. It's very bizarre.
Apparently, I'm not the only one. So if you guys have any ideas, share them with us at hotcupcoldcasepodcast@gmail.com or post some comments on Facebook and Instagram at hotcupcoldcase.
Yeah, I'm curious to know what everyone thinks about it. So that's it. That's my case for Adam and Elena Emery.
So as you know, the case I'm sharing with you tonight is a closed case, and it involves a woman who solved the murder of her best friend.
Oh, wow.
This is the case of Angela Samota. In 1982, Angela Samota was beginning her freshman year at Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas. Her first day on campus, she met her roommate Sheila Gibbons for the first time, and the two soon discovered they were completely incompatible. Sheila was a freshman psychology major, and she was shy and observant, didn't like to drink or party, and struggled with her studies due to her dyslexia. Angela, on the other hand, was the polar opposite. She was a social butterfly and one of the few girls in the computer science and electrical engineering department.
Oh, okay.
She would often study late at night, and her new roommate Sheila described her as, quote, vivacious and friendly, saying she was, quote, the triple threat, great personality, real cute, and smart, which oddly enough is also how I describe myself. Their first semester together, the two roomies didn't really get along, not because of their differences, but because Angie had a boyfriend that Sheila didn't care for.
You know, I didn't really get along with my roommates either. I think we were all too much alike, and we all wanted things our specific way.
Oh, that's right. You had roommates before you met me.
I did.
The only roommate I had before you was my mother.
That just sounded so weird. I don't know what just happened, but that hurt so bad.
Did the office chair just attack you?
I think it did. That hurt so bad.
Rachel's sitting in my office chair tonight, and apparently it has betrayed her.
I'm fine. Everything's fine. It's going to be fine.
No, it's not fine. And you know what? This wouldn't have happened if we had yoga ball.
That's right.
Get up. I'm taking care of this chair right now. I'm bringing yoga ball back.
I'm not kidding.
So after Angie and her boyfriend broke up, both she and Sheila began to grow a lot closer. They eventually joined a sorority together, and by the end of their freshman year, the two girls were the best of friends. A couple years later, in 1984, Sheila was back at home with her family in northern Texas, and she and her friends were planning on attending one of SMU's weekend football games against their school's rival, Baylor University. Angie had plans to go out for drinks the night before, but she told Sheila and the rest of their friends that she would definitely see them at the game the next day. That Saturday, Sheila's phone rang and she ran to her room to answer it. It was one of her sorority sisters, Barbara, and she was crying hysterically into the phone. And Barbara said there had been an accident involving Angie, but she couldn't manage to say much more than that through her sobbing. And after a minute or two, Sheila just point blank asked her, "Is she dead?" And Barbara responded, yes.
What?
Angie had been murdered.
What?
Yeah, Sheila said she just screamed. And her mother quickly came running into the room and found Sheila barely able to breathe through her heartache and tears.
Oh my gosh.
And looking back, Sheila said that that moment changed everything in her life and that, quote, the world was never the same.
That is absolutely awful. Where was she murdered at?
Well, Angie's body had been discovered in her off-campus condo early Saturday morning after that night out drinking with her friends. It was clear she had been sexually assaulted, and the cause of her death appeared to be a violent stabbing as well.
Oh, man.
Investigators were able to collect a few DNA samples from the crime scene, but with DNA testing still in its infancy in the 1980s, it didn't prove to be very helpful in identifying any suspects. Soon after that, Sheila was asked to come to the Dallas police station to answer some questions regarding her best friend's murder. And when she arrived, investigators directed her to a table where Angie's case files had been laid out in full view.
That's weird.
Yeah, they asked her questions about Angie and even requested she look at a few of the crime scene photos.
Oh my gosh.
One in particular even showed her best friend's lifeless body laying across her bed with eyes wide open and blood everywhere.
That's absolutely inappropriate.
Yeah, Sheila said, quote, "To this day, I still remember how horrible it was. It was quite traumatic."
If I was Sheila's mom, I would have lost my ever-loving mind.
Oh, if you were Sheila's mom, you're about to have a fit when you learn what happens next.
Oh, great.
So the investigators told Sheila that they had reason to suspect Russell Buchanan had murdered Angie. Now, Russell was a friend of Angie's who had also happened to be one of the last people to be seen with her alive. He was 4 years older than Angie, but he was shy, and Angie had invited him to go dancing with her and her friends the night she was murdered. Russell had told police that he didn't even know Angie was dead until he heard the news days after she'd been discovered. So investigators asked Sheila to invite Russell out to dinner to see if the story he would tell her was consistent with the story he had told them. And Sheila said, quote, "I remember my mom flipping out when she found out what police had asked her to do."
No.
Can you imagine if some detectives were asking our daughter to have dinner with someone they suspected was a killer?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, it's crazy. But Sheila, realizing this could help bring her best friend's murderer to justice, decided to go through with the plan. So Russell came and picked her up, which, first of all, that's crazy if you think he's a killer.
Yeah, no, we would have been meeting there.
Yeah. And they went to a place called August Moon. Now, I know this meeting took place back in the 80s, but just for fun, I did decide to see if there's still a restaurant in Dallas, Texas called August Moon. And believe it or not, I found a place.
I've never heard of that place.
It's probably not the same place. It's a Chinese restaurant.
Oh.
And it is closed now, probably because of the Yelp reviews.
Oh.
Yeah, so I have a couple for you.
Oh, you know I love me some good reviews.
Rachel W. gave August Moon 1 out of 5 stars. She said, quote, "The noodles were decent, nothing spectacular, and they gave me gas later on."
That's great, Rachel. No one needs to know that information.
TMI, Rachel.
Gosh.
Yaloon W. said his server was, quote, emo, and described the California rolls as, quote, suspicious.
Oh, gosh. That's hilarious.
I'm not sure what that means.
I don't know, but I love it.
He only gave the restaurant 1 out of 5 stars as well because he, quote, only saw one TV in the whole place.
Oh, great. Okay. So just stay home and watch TV, buddy.
He also said, quote, the booth chair was kind of low for the table. I'm just imagining this guy sitting in a chair that's too low for his table being served suspicious noodles by an emo waiter.
That's hilarious.
So back to August Moon in the 1980s, Sheila is sitting across the dinner table from Russell. And she said, quote, I'm thinking, I'm sitting here having dinner with my best friend's murderer.
Yeah. Terrifying.
So afterwards, Sheila informed detectives that Russell simply told her what he had already told them. But detectives still weren't satisfied, and they asked Russell to submit to a polygraph test while continuing to bring him in for more and more subsequent interviews. And that's when Russell stopped cooperating entirely and hired a lawyer. And his lawyer was Richard Racehorse Haynes.
Oh, yeah. Good old Racehorse.
Which, if you want to know more about him, he is a legendary Texas attorney. And actually, the Criminal Podcast has produced an excellent episode called Racehorse Haynes that you should definitely check out. So that's who Russell hired. But as it turns out, Russell didn't really need him because there was absolutely no physical evidence tying him to this crime. And without any other suspects, Angie's case went cold. So with Angie's murderer still at large, Sheila was not only haunted by questions, but robbed of her innocence. She said, quote, I slept on the floor in my mom's room for quite a while.
Oh, that makes me hurt.
I never went back to college. She actually dropped out of SMU altogether.
Well, there's no way that if my best friend was murdered in our dorm room that I could ever go back.
Yeah, the world suddenly became a dark place for her.
Oh, yeah.
And it just wasn't safe anymore.
Ugh, that's awful.
So for years afterward, Sheila continued to meet with one of the detectives from Angie's case. And in fact, they met so regularly that the two eventually became close friends. And when Sheila got married in 1988 to a different guy, she even asked that detective to be a part of her wedding.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. And decades passed. 20 years go by, in fact.
Oh, my gosh.
And Sheila, who is now married and has raised 2 sons, has moved to Tennessee where she's now a stay-at-home mom. And one night in 2004, Sheila is home alone working through a Bible study. And what happens next is so bizarre. I think I should just let Sheila tell you, like, in her own words.
I love bizarre.
So here's a direct quote. I know it sounds crazy. I promise you that it sounds crazy to me. So I was reading, and then I remember looking to the right, and there was Angie.
Oh, wow.
I thought, am I dreaming? Am I asleep? What is it? There was no talking. It was just her and her great smile.
Oh.
I don't know if I believe in ghosts, but I have a lot of faith, and I believe that there are messages. And at that moment, I thought, it's time. I leaned over to my nightstand and picked up the phone and called the Dallas Police Department just like that.
Wow, that's crazy.
End quote. Isn't that wild?
Yes. I'm so glad it didn't, like, freak her out. I gotta say, it might freak me out. What would you do?
You know, I have a friend who claims that she has been visited by angels on 2 separate occasions. And the first one, she said she was at home alone, much like Sheila, and she was sitting in her living room and she had some wind chimes hanging in the corner. And she said they suddenly began to move. like the wind was blowing, or maybe the AC. But she said that not all of the wind chimes were swaying, just one was moving. And as she watched it, she said an angelic being suddenly appeared beneath the wind chimes, and he had his finger in the wind chime and was just playing with it, moving it back and forth. Yeah. And I'm inclined to believe this woman because she's a close friend of our family.
Well, and you and I believe in that stuff. Like, we believe in angels, demons.
Yeah,
we've both experienced stuff on our own, too.
Yeah. Well, back to Sheila. So she called the Dallas Police Department, and they transferred her call to their homicide division because there was no designated cold case unit. And Sheila left a message for the same detective that had once been a part of her wedding. Well, that detective never returned her call.
Oh, no.
In fact, over the next few years, Sheila made somewhere around 700 calls to the Dallas Police Department and never once heard back from that detective on Angie's case.
That's so weird.
Yeah, she said, quote, I'm a little bitter about that.
Was he dead?
No.
That's weird.
I know, and I am the worst when it comes to responding to people's calls and texts.
Oh my
I'll
God,
admit
yes,
that.
you are.
And for that reason, I don't take it personally when someone doesn't call me back. But I think in Sheila's case, she has good reason to be a little bitter about being ghosted by a detective.
Well, especially one that you were super close to and was in your wedding, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Well, the officer she did manage to speak with told her that she was the only person to call regarding Angie's case in over 20 years.
Oh, that breaks my heart.
And the police officers informed Sheila that the evidence collected from the crime scene, including the rape kit, had actually been lost during a flood that had devastated Dallas. So it was at that point that Sheila decided to take matters into her own hands.
I like Sheila.
Yeah,
Sheila,
I have a feeling you would.
I like you.
At 40 years old, she began pursuing a career as a PI. Rachel's dream job.
It is. Brant won't let me do it.
In order to obtain her private investigator license, Sheila and her oldest son would sit down after dinner while he quizzed her on all the Tennessee laws that she needed to know.
That's crazy.
Yeah. She said, quote, once I had passed the exam, I stopped going to cocktail parties because we were investigating my neighbors, or some of them had hired me. And when you know people's personal lives, it's very uncomfortable to be in a social situation where they want you to talk about stuff that you can't talk about. And then she said, but I loved it.
Oh, I would totally love it too.
Oh, I know. You would get along with Sheila just fine.
Hey, Sheila, if you're out there listening to this, we could still be BFFs.
Over the next several years, Sheila began taking on small cases, investigating cheating partners, cyberbullies, and stalkers. And she eventually worked her way up to investigating cold case files. Soon, she had a war room set up in her home, complete with scattered pages from Angie's case files and printouts of reports from all the rapes that had happened during the time period of Angie's murder.
That's crazy.
She said, quote, I think when the Dallas Police Department found that out, they knew I wasn't going away.
Absolutely.
So in 2008, police did eventually reopen Angie's case, but they assigned it to a different detective, a detective named Linda Crum. Detective Crum not only returned Sheila's calls, but Sheila said, quote, when she called me, she had the file, she knew the case, she had done her homework, and she knew that Russell Buchanan was the number one suspect. But the thing that shocked me most was that she said they had the evidence. So remember Sheila had been told that most of the evidence in Angie's case had been lost in a flood?
Yes.
Well, Detective Crum informed Sheila that some of the DNA samples from the crime scene had in fact survived. And they included DNA that had been collected from under Angie's fingernails, as well as DNA from semen left at the crime scene. So they had the killer's profile.
That's crazy.
Yes, and Detective Crum had more good news. With all the scientific achievements that had been made in the field of DNA testing over the past 20 years, she believed there was a good chance forensic analysis might finally be able to identify Angie's killer.
That's crazy.
But there was one catch. It would probably take months to get the test results back from the lab. So Detective Crum submitted the samples, and months went by. Then, nearly a year later, in 2009, Sheila's phone rings, and it's Detective Crum. And she says, quote, Sheila, we got him.
That's crazy.
Sheila said, quote, "I thought she meant Russell Buchanan.
Right.
When she said Donald Bess, I was thinking, I can't place this guy. Who is that?"
Yeah.
Donald Bess was a convicted rapist who had been out on parole during the time of Angie's murder. Since her death, he had been convicted of another assault and was currently serving a life sentence in prison. So with the physical proof in hand, Donald Bess was officially charged with Angie's murder, and his trial was scheduled for 2010. When Bess's court date finally arrived, Sheila drove 650 miles to attend the trial. She said, quote, "You couldn't have kept me away from it. To me, I felt like I needed to be there for Angie." And she wasn't the only one. Angie's family members and friends and sorority sisters were also present.
Oh, wow.
During the trial, it was discovered that Bess had knocked on Angie's door that night and asked her to use her bathroom and her phone before violently raping and stabbing her.
God.
The jury deliberated for less than an hour, and Bess was found guilty and sentenced to death row. When asked how she felt about the verdict, Sheila just cried.
No.
And she said, quote, "Nothing changes. You still have someone who's dead. You still have someone who murdered her. You still have a world that's changed."
Oh, that's so heartbreaking.
Yeah, I think that perfectly captures the heart of a guilty verdict.
Right.
So after the trial, Sheila actually called Russell Buchanan, the man she and the rest of the Dallas Police Department had believed was responsible for Angie's murder. And together, they visited Angie's grave.
Wow.
There, she asked Russell to forgive her for hating him all this time.
Oh, wow.
For decades.
Right.
And that's when Russell told Sheila that it was her persistent search for the truth that had not only brought justice to Angie, but to him as well.
Oh, yeah.
Because now he could live free from the murderous suspicions that had followed him for decades.
Yeah.
Remember, police were convinced he did it?
Right.
And they had everyone else convinced he did it too.
Well, that's the problem with just zeroing in on one person, especially when they're innocent, is you literally change their life forever.
Right.
He would have carried that forever. Everywhere he went, people would have treated him differently because of that.
Yeah.
And he was innocent.
Yeah. So with Angie's case finally closed, Sheila was ready to retire from private investigating altogether. And then she started getting calls from people in need of help, and she just couldn't say no. Since then, Sheila has been featured in People magazine and continues to work as a PI.
Sheila, you are the real MVP, man.
I know, right?
Woman.
She's the MVPI.
Oh, God. All right, so I have a mugshot for you tonight.
Oh, I cannot wait to hear this story.
A Florida man was arrested for attempting, get this, to break into a jail.
Why?
Oh, yeah, and I have a picture. We will put this on our Instagram. This is how they found him. That's him.
Oh my God. He's really tangled in there.
He's in the razor wire.
Oh my God, that's gotta hurt. And he was trying to break into the prison?
Sure was. 24-year-old Patrick Rempe was arrested at the jail when they found him tangled in the fence in the barbed wire. So apparently he was high on some type of synthetic drug and decided that he was going to ram his car into the door of the jail and then proceeded to jump a fence so he could go visit his friends who are currently housed in the jail.
So tell me, did he end up going back to jail for this stunt?
Oh, he for sure is sitting in jail now, so he can visit them all the time. Who wants to break into jail?
You know what? It's stories like these that really would have convinced me as a teenager not to do drugs. That makes it sound like I did drugs.
Yeah,
I
you
didn't.
did not.
I was a DARE graduate.
Me too. There ain't no room for drugs over here.
Do you guys remember DARE? Anybody out there remember DARE?
It was amazing. It was DARE to keep kids off drugs.
Yeah.
And they stopped funding DARE.
What did it stand for again? Drug Abuse Resistance Education?
Dang, that was good. I have no idea.
You know what? My DARE officer would be really proud right now to see what I've grown up to become. A true crime podcaster.
I remember when I was in elementary school, the DARE program actually led to convicting a very big gang in a neighboring city.
Is this in the ag?
Stop it.
Where you grew up, Rachel? Why does this not surprise me?
Okay, my neighborhood is not that bad, Brant.
At my school, they were handing out like stuffed lions.
He was a dog. The DARE mascot, it was a dog, not a lion.
He was a lion.
He was not a lion.
Rachel, you were talking to a DARE graduate.
I was too.
I won the DARE essay contest, and my prize was a DARE jacket and a stuffed lion. I coveted that lion so much.
Dang it, you're right.
Yeah, I know I'm right. Because I loved that stuffed lion so much that when the one girl in my elementary school whose attention I had been wanting for years finally came up to me and was like, "Hey, Brant, can I have your stuffed lion?" I was like, "No, Kelly, you can't." And I'll tell you what, I wore that DARE jacket well into high school. I was proud.
And I'm proud of you. Babe.
And the funny thing was, it wasn't even a DARE jacket that fit a small child. It was like a men's large.
Of course it was.
It was like designed to fit the police officer that gave it to me.
And you still can't wear a men's large, Brant. Wait, what is that dog? He had on like the trench coat.
Yes.
Yeah, what is that?
You're thinking of the detective.
What was his name? We're gonna Google this.
We're Googling detective dog.
Snuff. Wasn't his name like Scruff McGruff? Yes! Take a bite out of crime! He's adorable and I don't even like dogs.
Oh, let's do the end. We gotta say the end thing.
Just a reminder, we love reading stories from our listeners about some of your most frightening experiences. So if you have a story we could share on the podcast, please send it to us at hotcupcoldcasepodcast@gmail.com.
And even if you don't have a story, please share the podcast with your friends and encourage them to listen. Because the more listeners we have, the more stories we can collect and share with you.
Also, if you're enjoying this show, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and any other streaming services. The more 5-star ratings and reviews we receive, the easier it becomes for people to find us in podcast directories.
And finally, for even more things to keep you up at night, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Hot Cup Cold Case Podcast, or subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Hot Cup Cold Case is written and produced by Brant and myself, with music by Young Kool-Aid.
If you ever need your mug filled,
or your spine chilled,
this is Hot Cup
Cold Case.
And if anything ever happens to me, go looking for that guy I almost swiped in my car.
If you're out there, buddy, I'm coming for you.
He's lucky he got me and not you. Although I wonder if it had been a girl, if his attitude would have been different.
I would have went Medea all over him. For sure.
Medea.